The way solar power is what is needed for the world right now, we need an applause in this room with the same amount of energy, please. Thank you. The name of the session is Reaching the Unreached with Solar. The session is in collaboration with SIF. To set the context for the session, can I kindly invite Mr. Nikhil Kumar, leading communications and advocacy at ISA.
Good afternoon. We are gathered here to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time: how to extend the benefits of solar energy to regions and communities that remain underserved and are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. As we witness increasingly frequent climate-related disasters, the urgency to act has never been clearer, making access to clean, reliable energy a critical economic, social, and environmental imperative. The global financial architecture for climate action has not evolved to meet the scale of today's challenges. There is much that can still be done to unlock private capital to truly reach the unreached. Instruments like concessional finance and guarantees, where public funds assume the riskiest tranches, can make private capital more willing to invest in high-impact and perceptually high-risk regions like the Global South. Effective multilateralism in climate action require every country and every voice. We must embrace a transformative vision which prioritizes equitable access to energy and ensures capital flows at reasonable costs across continents. This session, in collaboration with Children's Investment Fund Foundation, will explore how solar energy can be a transformative force in these underserved regions. Together with international development efforts such as those led by JICA and the strategic initiatives of International Solar Alliance, we can unlock sustainable pathways for development. This session will also highlight South-led solutions that are driving innovative solar adoption and the critical need to mobilize the trillions required for climate action while ensuring that finance reaches the regions that need it most. As we discuss these ideas, let's remember that solar is not just about clean power, it's about bringing hope, resilience, and opportunities to millions who have been left behind. I'm confident that today's discussion will offer valuable insights on how we can collectively accelerate this vital transition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar, for setting the context for the session. Ladies and gentlemen, be generous with your applause. We need this all throughout. It is a sign of your participation. Thank you. Our moderator for the session will be Mr. Govindraj Ethiraj, founder editor The Core. Please welcome him as he's here with us on stage. Our panelists for the discussion are, we have with us Kate Hampton, CEO, Children's Investment Fund Foundation, SIF. Thank you very much for being here. Dr. Ajay Mathur, Director General ISA. Thank you, sir. Eiji Wakamatsu, Senior Representative, JICA, India. Can we please hear it from him? And with that, I'll hand over the session, of course, to our session moderator to kindly drive the conversation. So if you may.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not very sure how we're on time, but I know it's tight. So I'm going to dive straight in. So reaching the unreached, the lens is going to be more economic and business as already been outlined in the opening remarks. So the format we're going to follow is as follows. Each of our speakers will speak for about 4 or 5 minutes and deliver their opening remarks from their vantage point on this subject. Like I said, the lens is going to be predominantly economic and business, because how do we invest and find the investments to reach those unreached. Post which we'll have a conversation. If you have any time left, I'd love to also get in some thoughts from the audience. So I'll go off in sequential order. So Kate, why don't you start off?
So it's an absolute joy to be here, and SIF is very proud to be a partner of the International Solar Alliance. We were talking in the green room about what would be useful today given the conversation that happened earlier, and we heard some great news from a number of countries, including India, about the massive progress that has been made on renewables. So I wanted to focus a little bit on the barriers to help with the conversation. And I think it's really important to highlight that we are in a race against time on climate change, But we are also in a race against time to really empower young people around the world to have a stake in the green transition. It's really important for all of us that all of those young people coming into the job market all over the world feel that this is their future and that they can participate in it. So if speed and scale is really the issue in job creation, there are a few barriers that we still need to get through so that we can have a high penetration renewable system. Power sector reform in all countries is going to be an issue. To get from low penetration of renewables to high penetration of renewables, you need a much more flexible system. We could talk about that. We could also talk about how to realize the promise of solar. It's essential that we electrify the whole economy as much as possible, because obviously you can just switch out for electricity, but you also need to electrify industry, electrify transport, electrify agriculture, electrify heating and cooling, alongside the solarization. And that brings into view the importance of storage and making sure that those peaks, daytime and nighttime peaks, across the megacities of the world have the capability to meet demand with a combination of solar and storage. For many countries, cost of capital is a major barrier. Sometimes it's the upfront cost for communities, households, businesses. Sometimes it's the cost of capital itself, and obviously those two things are related, and we could talk about that more. And this is why SIF was so excited to join with ISA in setting up the Global Solar Fund, but we should get into that a bit more. Skills are also an important gap. There are so many young people around the world looking for jobs, and yet we are not doing enough to train our young people to deploy the decentralized energy solutions, the rooftop solar, and we all need to double our efforts there. I would also finally note as a barrier international collaboration. Big countries with big balance sheets are guaranteed to be part of the race to solarization. But there are lots of countries that are smaller, medium-sized countries that feel shut out and feel like they're just going to be on the extractive end or the climate impact end of this story. Every country needs to see themselves in this transition. And so it's really important that we all think about balancing low-cost transition with inclusive transition and ensuring that countries and communities can all take part. And this is where international collaboration is going to be absolutely crucial, making sure that value addition and growth and jobs is part of the green transition for everyone. And this is why we're so excited to be part of the International Solar Alliance, because it exemplifies this kind of collaboration. We need to move the big financial institutions, as was said in the introduction. The global financial architecture is not helping us to the extent that it should. And India's G20, with work like the MDB expert group and other things, have started us on that pathway, but we need to go much further and faster to ensure that the global financial architecture, public and private capital, are working in unison to deliver inclusive growth, jobs and the green transition.
Govind, first of all, I 100% completely agree with what Kate said and what Nikhil and you had said earlier. Let me elaborate. At the end of the day, we are seeing a huge amount of investment occurring in solar. But the vast amount of it, by vast I mean 74% of it, occurs in the OECD and China, and something of the order of 85% if you include 4 more large developing countries. This is a challenge because, you know, the way I thought of it was, if you look at Africa, which is a home to possibly 60% of the world's solar resource, the amount of investment that occurs is hardly 3%. And that got us thinking about why aren't people investing there. So thanks to Kate's organization, we were engaged with a large number of private sector investors and asked them why they were not serving the unserved. The answer we got was not very surprising. It was, we don't expect great returns. Okay, so then we talked, and I see Anita there. Anita's work was influential in this because what it turned out was that For example, in Africa, the number of solar loads, yes, they are low, but the number of solar loads on which companies have defaulted is less than 2%, right? If you look at Europe or you look at India, the default rate is nearer 6 to 8%, which therefore implies that there is a perceived risk more than a real risk. And if there's a perceived risk, that's the foundation of guaranteeing investments. So if you are an investor going into Africa, and we said for small solar, because that's what touches communities, touches women, touches youth, touches the private sector, much, much more than large solar does. We said, if you go into those, you can buy a guarantee from us. And if you're not repaid, we will pay you. And if you are paid later, you give us back the money, so it becomes an interest-free loan. But what it does is it allows investors to get comfortable with investing in unserved places. And what it does, most importantly, is that it enables them to be so comfortable that the next time around, they don't buy a guarantee. That would be the success of the guarantee. We are, as you heard me say earlier, we are looking at building up this guarantee. We are looking to building up a relationship with Africa 50 on being the manager of the Africa funds. So this was the first issue. But Kate, whenever I talk to leaders, one of the things they all tell me is exactly what you said about capacity. If this is done, who will do it? Therefore, we need to invest in local capacity. There's a number of ways of doing it. In countries which show a large amount of interest and move, we establish what are known as the STAR centers, Solar Technology and Applications Resource. That's what STAR stands for. STAR centers there which look at local capacity building. We want these centers to be self-reliant. So we are working, for example, to provide them the equipment that they can do testing of solar panels in the longer run. But the country will have to agree to that. We are also saying, let's locate them in institutions which do capacity building. Universities, for example, instead of creating brick and mortar from scratch. The last point, Kate, that I want to focus on is again something that you mentioned, was on regulations and policies. I can't tell you how important that is. Most of these countries that we deal with, that we are in engagement with, are used to the model in which the government invests in electricity infrastructure. Now, this needs to change because the total amount of money that the solar sector needs is far, in terms of megawatts, is far more than what, say, for example, the fossil fuel sector would be. In any case, many of these countries are up to their ears as far as sovereign guarantees, sovereign loans are concerned. So they have to look at private sector investment. Who will decide on these private sector projects? How will the process of finding a bidder occur in a way that you keep on lowering the prices and therefore do good for people who will get that electricity? How would you ensure that the electricity that is bought from these private sector developers is actually paid for, the power purchase agreements? These are the things on which regulations need to change. They need to look at these issues as well. And therefore, what we focus on is providing regulatory training and sometimes working with the countries on rewriting the rules or retro-writing the rules so that they start looking at the kinds of actions that are needed. We believe that there is global traction for this. We believe that there is a hope for change. Govind, I think we are at the cusp of a revolution.
Thank you, Govind, and I agree with everything that was said by Kate and Ajay. So my name is Eiji Wakamatsu. I'm a senior representative in charge of energy, forestry, and agriculture at JICA India office. So as many of you know, JICA is an ODA implementing agency of Japan, providing sovereign and non-sovereign loans, as well as grants and technical cooperation. So you said storage, flexibility, electrification, Kate, cost of capital, skills, and we agree with that, and we do it on a different level, which is government to government. So specifically, we support governments in supporting and planning human resource development for energy transitions in developing countries. For example, in Indonesia, Bangladesh, Laos, and Cambodia. And next year, we will start with India to develop an energy transition roadmap for India. We are also promoting joint research because the current technology will not take us to the 2050 goals. So we need to invest in research, and we need to do it jointly with developing country research institutions. And also we're promoting geothermal development in countries with high potential, such as in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. And exploring ocean thermal energy in countries, in island countries. Especially in Africa, we are promoting hydropower development and power pool promotion. And in Africa, we are also dispatching experts to Nigeria, Angola, Namibia, and Botswana to advise governments to overcome barriers to accelerate private investment in the power sector. In non-electrified areas, we promote off-grid projects through our private finance arm, while taking care to strike the optimal balance with grid extension, which sometimes are a risk for many grid operators. In India, JICA is the biggest bilateral donor, and India is JICA's largest client. We have so far supported installations of around 14 gigawatt of energy, including around 9 gigawatt in renewable, of which 2.5 gigawatt is solar. Since 1978, we have financed 90 ODA loan projects throughout the country. We have also supported 9 states in modernizing transmission and distribution networks that have helped in promoting energy efficiency in the country and helped in providing a capacity to take on new solar capacity. We have also financed pump storage plant of 900 megawatts in West Bengal and is currently financing 1,000 megawatts of additional PSP plant with variable speed pumps in the same state. As for solar energy, we provided ODA loans to Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency and India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited to provide long-term finance that they can own to support development of solar among other renewables. And also we have made an equity investment to an impact investment fund that is run by SBI Ventures Limited. The fund has invested in the Hygenco Green Energies, a company that develops and deploys scaled-up commercially viable green hydrogen and green ammonia production assets. So this company can transform what is produced by solar into storage, which Kate alluded to. So let me stop there, but my message is that we need to innovate, we need to invest in research, and we also need to combine solar technology with digital technology in order to accelerate this innovation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me pick up on 2 points. One is the policy challenges that Kate referred to, and the second is the global financial architecture that is either enabling or not sufficiently enabling further investment, and we can dive into that a little bit. So Kate, could you dive a little deeper first into the policy side. Now, in the Indian context, almost 87% of solar power is actually grid. 13% or so is rooftop. We've got ambitious plans. The Prime Minister said 10 million homes rooftop. Apparently, there are 13 million registrations already from people asking for it. So, how do you see this developing?
Thank you. I mean, I think there's a gentleman to my left who's more of an expert on the Indian power sector than me, but let me share some of the experiences from around the world which may be pertinent for India, although of course India will have to chart its own path with its own unique characteristics. I think one of the key issues is dealing with systems optimization. So you can have a very, very agile grid that works as a system with a very large balancing area with good transmission, and the cost massively comes down because you need less kit. You need fewer wires and you need fewer solar installations, you need less battery storage. A fully optimized system is actually very, very cheap. But we all know that there are lots of reasons why systems evolve: regulatory systems, financial systems, industrial systems, and so it's never that simple as it is on paper. But different countries have approached it in different ways. You basically want to get to a regulatory environment where you're incentivized to use solar when it's available. So for example, if you're looking at the cooling sector, for example, if you're looking at big industrial fridges in a cold chain, what you want is to create a system that focuses on the temperature in the fridge, not the amount of electricity going into the fridge, so that you're focusing on the energy service. So that is where the digitization that we just heard about comes into play. So combining India's brilliant digital push, which is happening across the whole economy, and India has huge expertise, and by the way, that will be really useful for other countries. Combining that with power sector reform will be a really, really important part of this, and always thinking about the demand side. And just one comment, if I can, on the global financial architecture. I think the really difficult thing is the point that Dr. Mato was making about perceived risk versus actual risk. After the financial crisis, rules were introduced, Basel III and Insolvency II, that make it very difficult for large pools of capital to invest in developing countries. There's a massive risk premium associated with that. Banks have to have very big balance sheets to do those kinds of investments. That was designed after the financial crisis, but that system is no longer fit for purpose. What we need to be doing is focusing on getting capital from where it is in abundance, recirculating in OECD government bonds and refinancing the same wind farms 100 times in Spain or whatever. We need to get that capital shifting around the world, and we need deeper pools of capital in developing countries instead of spending their money on T-bonds, actually investing in country. So that whole system needs to be rethought so that capital can go to where it's needed to harness this extraordinary human potential and the potential of the green transition to deliver jobs and clean air and a safe climate, as well as very low-cost energy for industrialization and agriculture.
Dr. Mathur, can I come to you? So, you know, the Minister said that we've added almost 15 gigawatts of solar power this year, and it's the highest ever, and the run rate seems to be maybe 30 plus gigawatts this year. I was just looking at some figures. The world as a whole installed 1 gigawatt in 2000, and we're now doing almost 2 gigawatts a day in the world. So obviously things are accelerating quite fast. So what specifically then is the policy lubrication that's required to make sure that things mesh? Because I mean, at one level it seems to be moving, but from what I can hear, there are clearly hurdles.
Yeah. So Govind, it might be useful, and pardon me, this may take a couple of minutes. It might be useful to look at different groups of countries having different needs, and therefore the kinds of lubrication that you need in the different countries is different. At the very, very broad level, macro level, you look at, in a sense, the developed countries where the energy use per capita is more or less constant. Why is that important? Because you can use more and more solar when it's available during the day when the sun is shining, and continue to use the existing capacity of fossil fuel for providing the nighttime needs. That's one. But if you look at most developing countries, and I'll disaggregate the developing countries in a moment. If you look at the developing countries, the demand is growing. So 4 years from now, when the demand is more, and it's more in the night, when the sun is not shining, including the day when the sun is shining, what do? Do you add solar and wind to meet the energy needs when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing? And at fossil fuel capacity for the times when it is not? That is a challenge. Thankfully, what has happened in the last few months is that we have had 4 auctions where round-the-clock renewable electricity prices, and round-the-clock renewable electricity is provided by solar, by wind, and batteries. When you do the 3 of them together, the price of electricity is less or competitive with that from fossil fuels. This, to me, is a big breakthrough. Now, the other 2, you break the developing countries into 3. I will not focus that much on that right now, but the fact is that you have the large emerging countries where, because of the scale that Kate talked about, you have huge growth as far as new products are concerned, as far as manufacturing is concerned. And then you have the small island developing states. That's the 4th category. If you have to go from one island to the other, how do you go? By boat. What do you use to power a boat? Diesel. Have anybody started talking of an electric boat which can go from island to island? That's what the kinds of needs that small island states have is very different from the others. So now, what do they need? I will argue that you need what Dr. Matthew-san said, commercial capital, which is ready to go into climate-friendly projects. You also need finance, which helps the transition. Now, the lubrication is in between, depending on which category they are. Some countries may need grants. Others may need technical assistance for project preparation. Others may need resources which help them in bringing down the cost of capital. Others may need guarantees, as I was talking about. So, depending on the kind of country, the lubrication is different. So, I'm sorry if it's a very long answer to your short question.
Not at all. So, if I have to take a step back, in reaching the unreached, now, of course, the proportion would vary between, let's say, grid power and retail power,
Right,
rooftop.
right.
How is today the policymakers' attention divided, and what's the ideal or optimum mix, if so?
So, there isn't an optimum mix. It's different across different geographies. One of the key issues that is of concern to every politician in the world is to get electricity to everybody, or get energy, because we are forgetting cooking energy, to get energy to people as soon as possible. If renewable energy round the clock is more expensive, then move to fossil fuels. This creates a lock-in effect, because then you've got several years before that investment starts paying. Consequently, what is absolutely important upfront is that we start addressing the investment needs. Because the good thing about renewables is that investments very, very soon, in 2 years, will become operational. They start earning revenue. So the investment money can be recouped and replaced with the bond money that Kate was talking about. So internationally, you are earning a return on that investment. The 2 things together can make change happen.
Okay. Eiji-san, as someone who is across the spectrum, you do grant financing, commercial lending, so to speak, which I'm assuming is at commercial rates. How do you see the mix when it comes to solar energy? What's paying off? What's not paying? What are the gaps that you are trying to bridge at this point?
Thank you. So for solar energy, we finance through private arm. As you were saying about battery, I think that's very important. For example, in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, we're providing battery storage because they have solar power, but they don't have power for the night, and stability is important. So we're providing batteries, in that island. And in other areas, we try to combine mega solar with battery storage to solve that issue. And so, to the private finance, we provide. We have a longer-term private finance, and it's slightly lower. It's similar to IFC's rate. And we don't take care not to crowd out the private sector. But I think the longer tenure is attractive to our partners like IREDA or IFCL or Tata Fund. And on the ODA sovereign loan side, we provide transmission lines or distribution lines, which is not so attractive yet to the private sector, but is still needed to improve the reliability of the grid. So as Kate said, to increase flexibility to the grid. So we differentiate what we finance.
Okay. Kate, if I got that right, you bring in about $200 to $300 million of your money into funding solar projects. Now, my question really is, and you talked about architecture, as you look ahead, how do you see, who all are going to be picking up the tab, and will that change, and should that change as things become more commercial, as they should, and people become more self-sufficient and so on? How do you see things today and going forward?
So just to be clear on the numbers in relation to SIF, so SIF is a philanthropy, it's a UK regulated charity, so we're a not-for-profit organisation, and we provide grant assistance around the world on a variety of issues, children's health and climate change being the main ones. And on climate change, we spend, as you say, about 300 million a year, but that doesn't go directly into solar projects, although we do fund some pre-project preparation to enable countries to develop investment pipelines. The lion's share of what we spend is actually on supporting countries on the journey of power sector reform. So we have supported many collaborations, including with bilaterals and multilaterals, to support countries as they move from 5% renewables on the grid to 10% renewables to 2030 and so on. Because all of those, as Ajay was saying, countries are in different stages and they have different needs, and it's really, really important to be focused on the country needs and the country circumstances. So most of our resources on climate change are indeed focused on the energy sector. That's a really important piece, the technical assistance piece, because the regulatory environment is key. And by the regulatory environment, I also mean subsidies and other things, because often governments need to subsidize new entrants or SMEs or poorer communities to participate in whatever transformation is occurring. And while renewables are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, we need to make sure, as you were saying, that the combination of renewables plus batteries are actually cheaper than existing fossil fuels. That's a real breakthrough for many countries. But even with that, some communities will struggle. And so this is where the role of philanthropy is really crucial. Grant-based philanthropic capital is the most flexible and should be focused on those with the greatest need. But it's only ever going to be a tiny part of the story. We need large-scale resources from the public sector, from the private sector, from multilaterals, all playing their part. But the great news about energy is that it provides a service that people are willing to pay for. So there's always the possibility of a return. The issue is, how do you balance affordability and attractive returns for investors? That's the job of government. Every government, whether local or national, has to decide what is the appropriate balance of affordability for the community or the user with the right level of returns to make it attractive. And so over time, we need to help countries as they move along this journey identify which parts of their energy system are already attractive to private capital, which aren't. And philanthropy can help countries and communities on that journey in partnership with others, because we're only ever a small catalytic piece.
Okay, Dr. Mathur, can I come back to you? So if we want to describe the scale of challenge ahead. One is in reaching the unreached, as in how much and where, and second is funding it. Where are we today and where are we headed?
Good question. If we are looking at serving the unserved, there is a number which is around 600 million of people who don't have access to electricity. And as we showed by looking at African grid extension costs, it's much cheaper to go for a solar mini grid than extend the grid by more than 10 kilometers. That's one view. The second is there are lots of people who are not getting adequate energy. This is supposed to be somewhere around 1 billion. Nobody knows the exact number, but it is somewhere around 1 billion. This is in addition to the 700 million that we spoke about. For these people, what you need is very much, pardon me, Govind will realize, and many of the people in the audience who are Indians will realize, we used to have something called inverter battery systems, in which you store electricity when it is there and use it when the electricity supply goes off. We need solar inverters in those cases, because it's a matter of reliability. That is an area in which you see a huge amount of progress occurring in many, many countries, including India. The third is at the heart of it, which is how much do we need? Well, if we need to convert all our electricity to solar, I think we have turned the corner on about 30%. So I'm sorry that these are rough numbers, but it gives you a feeling that while the journey has been good, the big challenges still lie ahead.
And the pace seems to be quite strong. I mean, I was looking at figures again. So next year, solar power should overtake nuclear power.
Yes.
The year after that, it should overtake wind turbines. The year after that, dams. And the year after that, gas-fired plants. And coal-fired by 2032. Now, this may be wishful as well, but this is the pace at which it seems to be going.
Correct.
So are we then, I mean, the policy question we've already addressed once, but are we adequately funded for this? And are these targets too wishful?
We are not, no, they're not wishful. I'll tell you where the challenge lies. The challenge lies because the capital investment, these are capital investment heavy projects. If you look at a solar or a wind or a battery project, all the investment is upfront. You don't then buy coal or gas or oil. But because it's an upfront investment, the distribution company or the generating company or the government needs that much money upfront. So, as a rule of thumb, it's approximately double. So if a fossil fuel plant you spend 1, then on equivalent amount of capacity with renewables, solar plus wind plus batteries, you would spend about 2. The question is, where is this going to happen? How is this going to happen? And there again, I have a feeling that we will need to get the investment money working double. So if you can make the tenor half, instead of 7 years, make it 3.5 years. That's good, because in 3.5 years, the renewable energy project starts working. And then, as I said earlier, you can replace it by bonds. It was for a very different reason, but yes. So it is possible to meet this future.
Okay, let me, Eiji-san, can I take a small, I mean, not a diversion, but a slightly different track. One of the illustrations of how do you apply, solar power is in situations which you may not think of otherwise. And I think you had a good example, which also tells people about how you should be thinking about the introduction of solar energy in our lives.
Thank you, Govind. And as Kate was saying, service is important in solar, and for them to understand, the affordability versus the right level of returns, I think there needs to be showcase of what it can bring. So, I'm in the forestry and agriculture sector, and we work in remote areas. So solar is very important in those areas. And I was in Tamil Nadu last month in a forestry project in a tiger reserve. And there was elephant-to-human conflict was a serious concern. So they set up solar electric fences along with the elephant trenches. And that prevented elephants from coming in. And there are more than 80,000 human-wildlife conflict in India right now. And this has led to no conflict between elephants and humans. And then this has led to people expanding their fields, farming fields. So because they feel safe that elephants don't come, and it changed their mindsets to coexist with elephants rather than thinking them as elephants, as enemies. And in West Bengal, we experimented with using AI technology to detect elephants coming in using several cameras around the village. And that worked as an early warning system for villagers to respond before the elephants reached the village. And that also decreased the incidence of human-wildlife conflicts. And these were run by batteries. But if they were combined with solar, and digital technology, this can transform the lives of people. So I feel excited when I talk about these stories.
Okay, we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask each of you to pick on two things. Kate, you've covered several things. I think what we didn't touch upon was the international collaboration. Maybe you can touch upon that. You've talked about the skill gap, particularly for youth. I think the minister also touched upon that earlier. So the one thing that you feel is a challenge, and the one thing that you feel is the opportunity which could respond to that challenge, or in general address, or rather move towards our larger objective of reaching the unreached.
I think the huge opportunity is the young people looking for work. Every year around the world, hundreds of millions of young people are entering the workforce. And in many countries, those young people, educated young people, because as a societies we're doing a better job of keeping people healthy and educating them, they're entering the workforce without as much opportunity as they deserve. So we should see this green transition as an opportunity to give hope and meaning and aspiration and empowerment and economic independence to all of these wonderful young people around the world. That's the thing that gets me excited, and we just need to be more creative about how we do that. In terms of the obstacles, I think geopolitics are a major obstacle currently. I think climate change, fortunately, and providing energy services through solar is perhaps one of the bright spots in multilateral collaboration. It's a space where countries are still talking to each other, where civil society is collaborating across borders. But there is a danger that it gets caught up in bigger, more complicated issues. And so I would just plead with everyone in this room to keep a space in your hearts for international collaboration. We've all got something to learn. No country has solved this problem. We're all in this journey together. And just one story of hope from the UK. The UK, which started, as you know, the Industrial Revolution, has just closed its last coal-fired power station. So it is possible, but everybody needs to go at their own pace, and everybody needs to feel part of it. Not just the big countries, not just the powerful, not just those with deep pockets.
Okay, Eiji-san, can I come to you? One
Thank you.
opportunity threat.
Yes, so capacity development is essential, especially in the public sector. And also us, because we're Japanese institutions, we want to harness the innovative powers of private sector, especially the Japanese private sector. And in Japanese private sector, there's comparative advantage in technology such as perovskite solar cells, and also reuse and recycling technology of PV modules, which is which is already a big issue. And also the Japanese utilities companies, system operators, have an experience of increasing penetration of variable renewable energy, so we can tap into that as well. And because Japan is a disaster-prone country, it has a comparative advantage in a decentralized energy systems that are connected to the grid. But when they are cut off from the grid, they are able to run on its own. So that can be also shared with our partner countries. And also, I explained about the Hygenco, a company that produces green hydrogen. And they have recently signed an MOU with Mitsubishi Power, which has developed a gas firing thermal plant that uses green hydrogen. So this sort of private sector collaboration can be facilitated more by public sectors such as ours. So thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Mathur, last word. So one
challenge to ensure that we get enough money to get renewables in place for the unserved. That's the biggest challenge. Opportunity, as Kate said, we have millions of young people. All you have to do is to go to the hall across, I think it's hall 13 if I'm not wrong, and look at the guys who have innovated there. You see all kinds of innovators coming from Africa. There is a tractor there which runs on solar energy. So, in my view, the sky is the limit.
Okay, and we've run out of time as well. So thank you very much. Thank you for being a patient audience. I know we were running late. I wish I could sum up and so on, but I'm told that we are really short. So thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me here as well.
Thank you very much. Can we have a huge round of applause for everyone here on the dais? Thank you for a very pertinent, very invigorating conversation. And while we get this picture in place of all the panelists along with our moderator, I will be requesting Dr. Mathur to kindly present a memento, a token of appreciation to everyone on stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Thank you once again to Mr. Etiraj for driving the conversation. Thank you very much, E.G. Wakamatsu, for your presence. Thank you very much, Kate Hampton, for being here with us. And also, this entire session was in collaboration with SIF. And of course, our very own Dr. Ajay Mathur. Can we have a round of applause for him, please? Thank you. We are all set to move in to our next session, I believe.